Welcome to Beyond the Schoolhouse, where we explore the best of public, private, homeschool, and alternative learning. I'm Sarah McCubbin, joined by my co host, Simit Patel, and today we're getting practical. We're going to talk about how to start your homeschool co op. We'll walk through the schoolmaking starting point form that We'll walk through the schoolmaking starting point form that helps you choose the right model, whether it's a support group, social meeting, field trip, fun class, or full academic co op. I'll share how I went from an interest based elective co op to directing an academic one, and what I wish I'd known about structure, volunteers, and handbooks. If you're ready to launch or level up your group, this one's for you. Let's get started.
This time we want to talk a little bit about schoolmaking.com. There's a form on there where you can complete the form and it'll give you a guide on sort of how to start your own school, basically. Homeschool co-op, whatever's right for you. So there's a bunch of questions on there. It doesn't take that long to complete. We wanted to sort of review some of the questions here to sort of unpack the questions a little more. Sarah has a lot of experience, so she can sort of guide us into what each question really means and how it's relevant, how people should be thinking about it. So one of the questions when you're starting a school or a co-op is, why do you want to start this group? So on our form on schoolmaking.com, you can start as a support group, you can start for social gatherings, field trips, fun classes, and academic classes. So I guess, Sarah, why did you start your co-op group? I guess let's start there. Why did you start your co-op group?
Okay, so the first co-op I was a part of, I did not start. I joined as a young homeschool mom with little kids, and I joined an elective co-op, which meant there were all kinds of classes, and they were ones that, one mom might want to teach a Lego class, another one might want to teach a science class about frogs, and another one might want to teach a journaling class. They were totally random. They were completely different for all the different ages. And I joined it for the purpose of finding friends, finding community, and just adding some consistent things to our schedule. I did not join it for academics or anything like that. So, I don't think I really had a philosophy of co-ops when I was first starting. It was just, I was trying to find other people who homeschooled, who had similar age kids to me. So that
Were
was
you
that was how I got started. Yeah.
were you a little lonely?
I don't know. Lonely is, you know, I had kids around me all the time, so I wasn't, like, lonely in that sense. However, when you're with your kids 24/7, you start to kinda get in your own head a little bit and wonder if you're doing it right, and also you want your kids to have friends. So, we were just trying to find our people because my kids were pretty young when we joined a co-op. I think my son was, like, in 1st grade, maybe 2nd grade. He was pretty young, and we had, started when he was in kindergarten, so we didn't have a huge network of people already for that, so we were just trying to find other homeschoolers.
Okay, so walk us through that a little bit. When you went to, like, you're there or you're trying to find, your people, like you mentioned, some friends or for your kids and maybe someone for you to have an adult conversation with, so you go to, how did you get there? Like, did you see a sign? Did you know someone?
Yeah. So, back then, that was, like, 17 or so years ago, I actually met somebody through another social connection, and she was part of the co-op, and she homeschooled, and she invited me to this group. Now, the way people usually find these homeschool groups, these co-ops or other groups, I would say that probably the most common way is through a friend, like if they have a friend that's in it, or there are Facebook groups. So most states have like I live in Ohio, so there's an Ohio homeschool group, and that's really big because it's the whole state. But then there's like subset ones. There's one that's like for Northeast Ohio or, Southwest Ohio. So people will go into those groups and say like, I live in this city and I'm looking for a homeschool co-op, and people will kind of share ones that are in their area. Now, obviously that's very broad, and you could get all kinds of co-ops mentioned. So I found it through a friend, and kind of the way in was she was already in the co-op. Usually co-ops register for the following school year in May, June, sometimes a little earlier. And so when the next registration was up, she sent me the information and, I registered my kids. And most co-ops have a volunteer requirement. So I signed up to be a volunteer. I didn't sign up to be a teacher because I didn't know anybody and they didn't ask me to. But some co-ops will want you to teach as well. So I knew one person on the day that we went the first time, but otherwise, you sign your kids up and then there's usually an orientation where you go and you meet these other families and your kids meet other kids, and it's a little awkward at first, but it's kind of like when you go to any new thing, it is a little awkward the first time. Like when my kids went to a new school, that was a little awkward the first time we showed up, but you figure it out. So that was my way into the co-op, and that's kind of the general trajectory.
But so this it sounds like it was pretty structured, meaning like there was an orientation, there was staff, so it wasn't just like meeting at a park and you sort of,
Sure.
figure
Well,
it
the
out.
co-op that I was a part of met in a church building, and it did have kind of some formal processes set up, like for registration. There was no paid staff. Everybody was a volunteer, but it did have a director. It did have a treasurer. It did have, a secretary. It had some organizational things in place. So ours had a process. Now, sometimes when you get homeschool groups that are a little more play based, they might be like what you said, like join us at a park on Tuesday, bring your kids and your lunch and everybody hang out, and that's a little more difficult because you could show up at the park and you don't really know who the homeschoolers are and who the other families are, right? You just don't know. So mine definitely had a little bit more structure. And I would say that there is usually some structure to most of these groups because, if you want your group to keep going, you can't just have nothing. Like if you, you know, so
But the structure, it sounds like it was centered around academics?
the classes were, I mean, academic loosely, maybe more unschooler type academics because they were more interest based. That's the best way to say it. So you might have a science class that was based around a specific topic. Like I said, like we're studying frogs or we're going to study birds. That might be something. Or we did a scrapbooking class, or there were like Legos. There was a survival class at one point. There's all kinds of like interest based classes in an elective co op. So that was how I started. That was not the co op that I ended up in forever. I mean, it was the same co op, but it eventually took a sabbatical year. And that's when I took over. It took a break, and then when we brought it back up, we brought it back up as an academic co-op, which is
Okay.
different than an elective co-op. So I did that first one for, I don't know, maybe 5 years, 6 years, like that, and then when when they needed somebody to step up to rebuild it, that's what I did. I was the director, and I rebuilt it.
Okay. So it started, and I'm looking at the forum that we have on
Yeah.
schoolmaking.com, thinking about a bit about that. It sounded, correct me if I'm misinterpreting this. It sounded like it started as like fun classes,
Mhm.
and then electives,
Yeah.
elective fun. Um, and then it evolved, especially when you became the leader, into something that was a little more academic. Is that a fair
Yes.
characterization?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
And while
Um,
it was,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, my son had gone to a hybrid or like micro school program for 1 year while it was still an elective co-op. He went to a micro school that was it was a classical academic program. And so I got to see how a program like that operated. And they did core academic subjects in the morning, language arts, history, science. I think they did a little bit of math there. They met 2 days a week. And then in the afternoon, they had some uh, more fun classes. It wasn't the same as a co-op, obviously, but it gave me a vision for how a homeschool group could provide accountability to families who wanted to have those academics, They wanted to emphasize quality academics and not lose that by going to fun classes 1 day a week. So, when we built it with academics at the core, and then we had fun classes in the afternoon.
And so how old your son who went to the micro school, how old when you were doing the micro school and the elective co-op, how old
Mhm.
was he?
He was in 2nd grade, so that
Okay.
was a long time ago. He's
Okay, right.
turning 23, so yeah, it was a long time ago.
Okay. And then so you weren't really concerned, like, you were just and, I'm trying to infer here, like, a second grader, if he's making some progress with literacy, making some progress with arithmetic, and he's having fun and is a happy kid, then we're all good. Is that sort of how you were viewing things or
Well, he's my oldest kid, so no, I was
Right.
not. You know how it is with your oldest child. They get the brunt of you wanting to make sure that you don't mess up. So, no, he went to a classical school because that's very academic. There's a ton of memorization, there's a ton of it's very rigorous. There was a lot of homework when he came home, a lot of grammar and memorization. He was super stressed out. I was stressed out. And I think that experience definitely helped me realize that that was not a pace I could continue, that I thought that we could achieve the same high quality education without burning me out. I had a lot of little kids, and it was a school that was about a half hour away. So that was a lot of driving too with a carload of little kids.
Yes.
So, yeah, it definitely made me reconsider whether that was the only way, because when you first start, you just only know what you know.
Right.
And so I didn't know any other way other than this more relaxed co-op, right? So that's when I took over, we kind of like married the 2 and like made something that was a happy medium.
I see. Okay. So and did when he was 7-year-old at the time, did he was also stressed out by the micro
Yes.
and did he like the electives? Was he excited to go there and do that?
He liked hanging out with friends. That was kind of the extreme opposite because there wasn't really any homework at the co-op. That it was the teacher would prepare a lesson, prepare activities, whatever, you show up and do the things in class and then come again next week and we're going to do it again next week. There wasn't a lot of expectation at home on the days you weren't there. Whereas, the classical program, there definitely was. You
And
definitely had homework, a lot of it.
and did you for the electives, the fun classes and the homeschool co-op, did you just drop them off or were you
Mm.
staying there?
Yeah, so homeschool co-ops are usually volunteer run and volunteer everybody volunteers. So you don't usually drop your kids off at a homeschool co-op. There are some variations that where you do, but no, I volunteered as a helper in a class. We Our co-op had 3 classes in the morning, and so I would volunteer for all 3 class periods. I might be in the nursery, I might be helping another teacher, and eventually I did teach classes, so I might teach a class, things like that. So the parents volunteered maybe in their kids' class, but maybe in somebody else's class. Maybe they're in the nursery watching the babies or the toddlers, things like that. Because it's for all ages when you do a co-op. It's not just school age kids always. Sometimes they are, but not always.
Right. And I imagine that you know, you can or whoever's running it can sort of add as much structure or remove as much structure as they like. So there can be teacher trainings, there can be policies on who's setting the curriculum,
Yes.
what you can bring with you, what you can't bring with you, how to address people, that type of thing.
Yes.
So how were the relationships? Were you able to make friends with the fellow staff or the other parents?
Oh,
You
yeah.
had a bunch of kids, did they come with you to your 7-year-old's class?
So the homeschool co-op, is that what we're talking about?
Right, right, yes.
Yes. So when he was 7 or so and in the co-op, my other kids were younger, but they were in, kindergarten class, and then somebody else was in the preschool class and somebody else was in the nursery. So they all came. They were all there in classes too. And my second grader was taking, fun classes, but the preschoolers were still being managed. They had playtime, read books, did
Right.
activities, had snacks, things like that, like you
Right.
would find in a preschool program.
Right. Play with
But it
blocks.
was you play with blocks, right? All those things. I think I remember being part of a mommy and me class there, and where we all took turns leading mommy and me activities. That one had a lot of moms in the class and a lot of 2 and 3-year-olds or something like that. So, yeah, it was always volunteering though. Like, so you end up with a really high ratio of adults to students.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe a good way to actually make meaningful relationships. Would
Yes, it
you
can be
agree
a
or
really great way if you go into it with the right mindset. People that want to go into homeschool co-ops and think they're not going to have to do any work, where they just have a school mindset, I think is the way, where if you're used to taking your kids to school, dropping them off, and then I'm not going to say not doing anything, but like you're not participating in the teaching and running of the day, those families tend to have a little bit more difficulty because they don't understand the buy-in that is needed for the whole operation to be successful. But if you come to a co-op and you know that you're gonna volunteer, you're gonna help, and so are the other moms, and together you're gonna, teach each other's kids and you're gonna make friends, it's great. I mean, I made friends with some of my lifelong friends 17 years ago at that co-op. We're still friends. So,
okay.
yeah,
And I imagine, based on what you've said so far, that if you're running the co-op or if you're sort of in charge of the structure, like if someone wants to join, if they're applying to register, things like that, like you probably want to communicate that, hey, this is not, drop off and see you at 3 p.m. This is,
oh,
you're a part
yes,
of this. You got to do stuff. You got to sign
yes.
up, all that type of
Every
stuff.
co-op should have a handbook. And in that handbook, you kind of outline your overall vision, mission for the group, rules, policies, how you handle everything as much as possible. You create a handbook just like any other school might have. You create a handbook. How do you handle finances? How do you handle calling off? How do you handle, you know, bullies? Whatever. You do have homeschool bullies. So, yeah, a handbook becomes essential. And so if you want to join a co-op, a great thing to do is ask to see their handbook, to find out if the way they are running lines up with the way you want to have your day go.
I think that's a really great point. In fact, maybe on our next episode, we can sort of talk a little bit more about the handbook,
Sure.
review what that looks like if someone's looking to create a handbook, how they can do that, how we can help them at school making,
Sure.
sort of what to think about when you're getting in or whether you're joining, whether you're creating it. But yeah, this was great talking with you as always, and I guess we'll pick up there next time.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Schoolhouse. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast so more families can discover new possibilities for learning. And if you're ready to take the next step and start your own homeschool group or micro school, we'd love to help. Just head over to schoolmaking.com and fill out the form. We'll send you tools and guidance to get started. Until next time, remember, learning doesn't just happen in the classroom, it happens everywhere.